meeting of the Cpdc is called to order. Do I go around and say who's?
You want me to give the little spiel?
Do it.
All right. Thank you all for joining us for the Cpdc meeting of Monday, March 10th, 2025. I'm Andrew McNichol, Community Development Director for the town of Reading. To my right from staff is Senior Planner Olivia Knightley. Tonight's meeting is a hybrid meeting format, so we have members in person and some on the Zoom. Members in person is Acting Chair Hillary McKeeve tonight, Tom Armstrong, and John Arena. On the Zoom is Guy Manganiello. As I mentioned, it's a hybrid meeting style, so if there are members participating in the public in person, please sign in the corner, and the board will likely follow their standard operating procedure tonight in that if there's a case to be made, the applicant will present the case to CPDC. The CPDC will comment and question amongst themselves and the applicant, and then open to public comment. If you do have public comment, please raise your hand so the chair can acknowledge you. If you're on the Zoom, please use the raise hand feature or type in the chat, and we're happy to gather your questions that way and make sure they're answered. If you can't find the raise hand feature found under reactions, please just wave your hand around on the camera and we'll capture you that way. Other than that, this meeting is being recorded and broadcasted by RCTV on all local channels and their YouTube to follow. I think that's it.
Okay. The first item is a continued public hearing for 346, 348 Main Street, and they've asked to be continued to Monday, April 14th.
Right.
Do we have to do anything about that?
You need a motion to do that, or is just that just
We do
consent?
need a motion. You can discuss too if you'd like, but motion, go straight to motion, it's fine.
Make a motion to continue the application of 34648 Main Street to Monday, April 14th at the request of the applicant.
I'll second.
Okay,
If you could do roll call since Guy's on the Zoom.
right, we'll start with Guy.
Guy, can you hear us?
Looked like he's trying to say something. I don't think your mic's working, Guy.
Is our audio?
Is my audio on? That's a good question. Can you try again, Guy?
Guy is talking. It sounds like it might be on our side.
Yeah, might be.
Is your mic unmuted? I mean, your speaker unmuted?
It is. Let him to leave too soon.
How does the PA make its way into the room? Through the owl?
No, usually it's just actually.
So you've got a wire connected to your PC to the house
Okay,
PA?
I vote yes. He just messaged us.
So,
My question is, can he functionally operate in the room without speech?
right.
That's why I'm asking all these questions for no other reason.
As far as I know, the audio.
Do you want me to unmute my computer so that he can say yes? Is that okay?
I think it's fine. For now. Ray, did you see the chat for this?
So he just was trying to say something, but it came in on the, said I vote yes on the bottom right-hand corner a minute ago, but
I don't see anything.
Me?
maybe we can unmute. Good thing we started with him.
Yeah, John, you want to see if you can?
Yeah, we
There
should,
is something just popped up.
good.
Oh, it's a direct message to
It's not gonna
the
work.
select
We've got
board.
two speakers.
Zoom.
Just-
I've got them on my PC fine, so
He did say I vote yes. It is unmuted. My mic is unmuted, and I just ran a test that it functions to confirm. Anything but an audio issue.
all right, why don't we continue? We're in the middle of a vote. So Guy's a yes, Hillary, you're a yes,
Yes.
Arena votes yes.
Armstrong votes yes.
Right, the next agenda item is a continued public hearing for the definitive subdivision application at 0 Harold Ave, and the applicant has ask to continue to Monday, April 14th.
Make the motion to continue the application for 0 Harold Ave to Monday, April 14th at the request of the applicant.
Okay, we'll do the room and then
I'll second.
John,
Arena, yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Hillary, yes, and Guy.
Votes yes.
All right.
Thank you, Dave.
The next, I believe, are some zoning considerations. There's a floodplain.
Yes, so I just wanted to at least start this initial conversation, and we can have as much conversation as you guys would like on the model bylaw. But as referenced in the near past, we do need to update the floodplain regulations and overlay district to match with the state's not just upcoming revised maps and panels, but their model bylaw from DCR, Department of Conservation and Resources. So that's where we've been working towards over the last few weeks, going back and forth with DCR on some comments and questions. We proposed an amended bylaw that you had in your package, a redlined version of the overlay district, section 10.1. Which DCR confirmed it meets all of their needs to meet the model bylaw requirements. And then virtually I also wanted to summarize some of the changes too in a more concise fashion. So I started with a very brief PowerPoint slide that I'll just pull up to summarize some of the intents here. So the floodplain bylaw amendments are, again, needed to comply with the state's model bylaw and map changes to allow private property owners to maintain or get flood insurance through the FEMA program if they so desire it. We need to remain in compliance with the firm flood insurance rate maps, and that's really what this effort is striving to, so that nobody loses the opportunity come July when the new maps are released. The brief additions and some of the majority of the proposed amendments revolve around adding new definitions to the overlay district bylaw, clarifying some language around variance procedures both at the state and local references from the model bylaw, administering a staff point of contact in person as floodplain administrator, which in Reading's case we found that the building commissioner was going to be a great fit for that position. Brett has been working towards floodplain administrator designation over the last year. He has experience with it in Lynn. And a lot of time the building department through individual permits can take a look at floodplain as well. So we felt there was an appropriate position here. That doesn't mean that's the only staff division that looks at floodplain, but in terms of this specific appointment that DCR is asking, we felt that that was a good role.
And if Brett or we end up with a new commissioner, will that be part, how?
We'll likely write that in the job description, and any type of either reference, previous experience with it, or similarly you could say that in the first year they receive the designation and go through some state trainings if anyone were to be appointed. Then other amendments include data and map references and requirements from applicants throughout the bylaw. So just to summarize, what is a major sticking point in the floodplain, which is really uses allowed and not allowed. And in Reading, we actually currently the floodplain overlay bylaw does not allow for much of anything in terms of new development, in terms of like structures, building, commercial or residential development. What we do allow is some municipal recreation and utility needs, drainage and flood infrastructure, and then agricultural and open space type uses like agriculture, markets and farm market. Rifle shooting is actually an allowed use as well by right. There's not a specific definition for any of these in the district, but they are currently allowed and they would remain allowed at least as proposed. Residential development was mentioned in the model bylaw in terms of potential subdivisions or residential expansion that could necessitate drainage requirements, similar to what we've seen on subdivisions, how we look for stormwater capture and treatment. Again, it's not allowed within our floodplain bylaw areas, flood map areas, but in the event that it's close and we need to make sure that the stormwater treatment and capture is adequate for the site, that is also found within this bylaw. And then we were adding some recreational vehicle language that the model bylaw requires us, mostly in terms of like lifting RVs and recreational vehicles so that they can meet the floodplain. We do allow some special permit uses in golf courses, other recreational and social uses and accessory buildings to any of the above by right uses. And we do prohibit earth removal and fill except for, again, really accessory type uses correlating to the above. And we had proposed language because it's not exactly clear that uses not explicitly described in the above by right or special permit section are prohibited. A lot of zoning bylaws typically say that for general use tables in districts, and we felt it was appropriate in the floodplain too, just to make sure it was clear that not all of the underlying uses in the district are allowed. And we can talk about that. And I wanted to note that conservation review is still required for any application proposed within the 100-year flood zone, which is predominantly what Reading will have in the new map, as we'll see in a second. So that is a conservation trigger. There is no buffer from the 100-foot flood zone unless it is a related wetland, but if it's within the 100-foot, there is a correlating conservation review for drainage, flood, and impact, and that will remain. In terms of the map changes, what we in Reading have consist a majority of Zone X, which is in the 500-year flood zone, and Zone A, which is the 100-year flood zone. The changes are virtually that all of Reading or any flood plain in Reading will now be Zone A. There's almost no Zone X anymore in Reading, which didn't have a lot of strict requirements in the past anyways on the 500-year flood zone area. Some areas removed from floodplain in total were the Timberneck Swamp on the southeast part of town. A portion of South Main Street lost some, which we'll see. There's some wetlands along South Street, some minor wetlands. Those are no longer designated as flood zone. Meadowbrook Golf Course has a series of flood zone area. Some of the south shrunk and was redesignated. And there were a series of residential parcels that were split and taken out of the flood zone. They are no longer within the flood zone, and those were identified on the letter of map amendment from FEMA. Again, the majority of map changes are going from Zone X to Zone A, and that includes some of North Cedar Swamp, Town Forest, and Birch Meadow, a lot of public lands and wetlands. Meadowbrook Golf Course, again, to the north, had some change. There's some wetlands in between South Main and Ash Street that are already regulated and undevelopable, but they are changing in district title. And some of Walker's Brook Drive did change in designation as well. So on the map, and I know this isn't a great image, and I can probably pull up the images alone. 1 second here to try to get a better, closer look. So this is our existing flood zone map. But what you can see is a series of orange and blue. Orange is the 500-year flood zone area, blue is the 100-year flood zone area. We're looking at a lot of, again, town-owned land around the perimeter, wetlands, parks, and swamps, but there are some private parcels too, somewhat near, split, or within the flood zone as it's currently designated. Walker's Brook is a majority of the 100-year flood zone area, and then some underlying 500-year zones towards the north. So their tool to compare is not the greatest, so you almost have to do it completely by eye. So if I missed in any areas, please feel free to let me know. But this is the new floodplain map, effective come July. What you'll see is a lot less orange, all blue. So again, that's virtually the almost removal of 500-year. There's some over here buried by these words, but we're looking at mostly blue. So you see a loss of orange on the South Main, on this north piece, some of these areas. Some were redesignated from 500 to 100 in the blue. Their boundaries might have shrunk or changed in some degrees, but it's especially along Walker's Brook and in this Ash Street area. But that's really the necessity of the map changes, which again aren't easily digestible on their FEMA flood zone map. There's one too many layers, if not 100 too many layers to go through. So we tried to summarize the key areas as best we could, but again, 100-year flood zone area is regulated both within the FEMA codes, building codes, and our local conservation and other codes and policies. So virtually all flood zone area now is regulated, but that's it in a heart. I know that's a lot, but happy for discussion.
I just had two, and I'm asking the question, but I know the answer. On the first slide, on the first document, you've got a list of by right, and it goes orchards, truck gardens, as opposed to truck comma gardens, right?
So I believe
Right
a
or
truck garden is an older term for a
picking patch.
right.
Okay.
Yep. So
And then-
I had to do a little research on that today.
Okay.
So it's a truck garden.
Okay, that's good. And then the rifle shooting, I assume that's hunting and not ranges.
I assume so as well, but it's not clear.
Does everybody on the board here assume the same as I do?
I don't think we should ever assume anything. We should know what you assume when you know what happened.
Yeah, that's right. Can we get a change?
Well, can clarify it first.
Clarify it?
We can either define it, remove it, or clarify it within that sentence. And let me see if we
Whose language is this that we're talking about? Is it ours or is it
It's
a
ours.
model bylaw?
Sorry.
How did it come to be that we added this language?
I don't know. This could have been part of a previous model bylaw.
Came probably from the same era that truck garden came from.
Right.
Well, there must be some history on it.
Yeah,
I have a
I'll see what I
number.
can find on that.
I have a number of other questions too.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I had one other, but I think you resolved it. And that was when you talk about variances in the changes and the like. And they could apply and make sure that they have minimal damages and all that kind of stuff, but it should be damages not only to them and their property, but also to other property that may be affected.
Right.
So, but I think that was handled in 10184 and stuff like that.
I think that those sections do get at that.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
If I understood you correctly, Andrew, this is driven by FEMA, now the Federal Insurance Administrator, redefining the flood maps, and we're just following along. Is that correct? At the same time, we're bringing in language that its origin is not this body. It comes from where, like what do you call it? Rifle gardens or what?
Yeah, right, it was,
Truck gardens, rifle gardens?
truck gardens.
Truck
Yes, sorry.
Where did that come from? Do we actually know?
So that language simply exist in the existing floodplain overlay district language, section 10.1.
So it pre-existed.
It is
Okay.
pre-existing. I don't know if you can do some research on when that.
That's fine.
overlay
If it
district was
pre-existed,
added.
I'm just trying to make sure it didn't spontaneously. So if it did, where'd it come from?
Well, it does say pistol and shotgun shooting on a land of any established range, but still,
Probably
what
makes
does
it
that mean?
worse.
The, in the PDF that was sent out with amendments with comment blocks that are red and blue, at least on my screen, who are those commenters?
That is myself asking the questions to DCR
Okay.
and them responding.
And so any strikeouts are required by virtue of the changes in floodplain,
Correct.
for the most part, I see. I have a question on 10.1.3 under development. Development previously was described as activities that were conscious, deliberate, and required effort, such as improvement or drilling or grinding. There's an amendment here to add purely passive activities, such as storage or materials. What was the thinking there? It seems to me if you're going to have development, you've got to demonstrate what happened if there's been a change. What drove that change?
That's a question I would have to ask DCR. That is again from their model.
Oh, it
bylaw.
is. It is.
Yeah.
Okay, so we didn't add this.
We did not. Everything here is to reflect the model bylaw needs that they're
Must
saying
we follow the model verbatim, or is there some tailoring we can do?
They allow some tailoring, but they like to be as close as practical.
I'd just be curious why that is a relatively passive activity.
Mm-hmm.
If I put something down on the ground, is it a violation or not? It seems hard and subjective. The other things, if I've drilled a hole, driven a nail, I get it. We can see the activity. So I question those two. They don't seem to be like the other categories. That's one.
I sense that might be in a flood event, they could float down.
That might be
so to
the
speak.
intent.
Yeah,
It's just,
right.
I might have a different category called storage, because it
Right.
seems like they're trying to
You're
jam
right.
it into a different area.
Mm-hmm.
They make a point of saying we're no longer going to describe these as the 100-year and 500-year floods. We're going to call them a base flood. And the nice thing about calling it the 100-year flood is what it is right in the name.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like we've made it worse. And to the degree, the whole world has internalized what a 100-year flood is. And I guarantee anyone who hears that will know what it means. I don't see any reason to give it a name that makes no sense at all, like base flood. What's a base flood? Well, let me look it up. Oh, yeah, it's a 100-year flood. So is in fact the 500-year floodplain is gone out of Reading, or it's still there in some de minimis way here and there?
There's still some de minimis area. It looks like it has another boundary overlaying on it too, some sort of crosshatch here. Let me look this up just to see.
It's not important. It exists in some fashion.
Yeah,
And that
it
was
does.
purely FEMA's or the Federal Insurance Administrator's call.
Correct.
All right.
So, right.
Still under definitions, page 2, functionally dependent use. This is a nit, but it says means a use which cannot perform its intended purpose. I don't think use is perform. They might achieve, might accomplish, but they don't perform as a people thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wordsmith because it didn't make any sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Then at the bottom of the page and continuing to page 3, for floodplain management, the term manufactured home includes park trailers, travel trailers, and similar vehicles. But for insurance, manufactured home doesn't mean any of those things. Is that really the intent of that language? One thing can mean two different things under two different circumstances?
Sorry, which definition was that under?
Last paragraph, page 2, first paragraph, page 3.
Manufactured home.
They define it two different ways for two different scenarios. The light is red unless it's Tuesday, in which case it's blue. Is that actually what they meant?
I will ask about that.
Continuing on here, what else did I have? The document continues to use 100-year floodplain, even in their writing, even though they call it base flood, so even they're not consistent. So rather than change it to let's just leave it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it? I think that's all I have. Those are mostly nits that will goof up people reading this years to come because they won't have any idea what does perform mean or.
Good questions.
Now, have we gotten comments or anything like that, or is the committee, with regard to the Eastern Gateway, that was being taken out, wasn't it?
No comments yet. Again, where that district and a lot of these that currently the floodplain doesn't allow development, I think at least how we talked about it last time, in this short-term effort to get to compliance, we at least, and we can change this if you guys want, but the idea that we allow development and regulate it within the floodplain can be done, and you can require certain elements like 2-to-1 storage and allow residential, commercial, or mixed use. But at least what I got from the last discussion is we weren't going to have that use conversation just yet until the findings and inputs from the Eastern Gateway are finalized, so that they can infer, should we allow any type of development in the floodplain? Should we not? Should we keep it as it is?
Okay.
But happy to.
I'm sure they must know this.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Would we have a hearing on this for the public or no? It's kind of.
So we do need to host a public hearing before town meeting. We were going to propose the date of Monday, March 31st to open the hearing. That would be an added meeting to CPDC. If we can make it, we can do it as a hybrid meeting. And that would allow us anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks to open and close the hearing. Your regularly scheduled meeting is April 14th. Could be a good date. This could be a one meeting thing. This could be, if you want to keep wordsmithing a bit and going back and forth with DCR, you can go 2-3 meetings and seek to close. I do want to notice some for that hearing. I do not believe FEMA nor DCR notices any developments or any property owners that could be now new within the floodplain. So what we were going to do is try to draw a buffer from 100 foot of the entire flood zone boundaries and notice any property owners within that 100 feet. We can go a bit further if we wanted to, but we just wanted to give people a heads up. Again, this is a lot of public land and wetlands already, so but there are some private properties in and around it, so we want to try to raise some awareness for the hearing.
I would think you'd want to notice anyone whose status has changed, either positively or negatively.
Mm-hmm.
So if they weren't and now are in a floodplain, obviously you got to get noticed.
Right.
The question is how far do the abutters go?
Right.
If you're not in a floodplain, you're not in a floodplain.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't think you need to worry about that, like you normally would with development 300 feet.
The maps just aren't clear. They know who was taken out of the floodplain, and those were noticed, I believe, to the individual property owners. What they don't have is a list of properties of those who are newly within the floodplain, which blows my mind. But
Can we overlay it with the GIS maps and just do a
Right.
manual?
I could probably do that locally. Yeah.
It should be pretty quick.
Yeah.
But I definitely would make sure it's noticed.
Yeah.
How many properties do you think are affected? Is it hundreds?
Say dozens.
Dozens. Okay, so it's a small number.
Are you going to make any changes before you have the public hearing, or just go in with this?
I think some of just the minor questions tonight can be addressed without substantially deviating from the intent of the bylaw. So we can make those changes as long as DCR agrees and says, yep, those are minor in nature, we can move forward with those and then propose that for the hearing.
Has Guy made any
I just messaged him.
comments or?
I don't think his mic is still working. But let's see if anything comes through, or our audio isn't working, I should say.
Well, if you were making changes, I would just because they asked the question truck garden, what is it? I'd redefine it, you know, basically to say gardens, and you could say including truck gardens if you want to. With regard to the other rifle shooting, I'd say hunting.
I feel like that is getting out of range when I reread it. It is actually
Seems like,
at a quick word search, it is the only time rifle shooting comes up in the bylaw. Let me try range in the entire bylaw.
Good job.
Change the range in that sense at a quick word search. So really the only
It's lead shot and all that kind of stuff that
yeah. I'll
I
flag
don't
it.
like it.
We'll see if we can either define it or clarify it. Let's see what we can come up with.
we're talking about the flood.
This is a silly question, but I wonder if this is dovetailed with private insurance for carriers.
It is.
So they're all aware of this already.
They do a better job of noticing homeowners than humans. So just to summarize, we got through the intent of the floodplain overlay proposals to meet the model bylaw. There were some questions in terms of some, I'll call it minor language if that's appropriate, choices, and if DCR would consider some alternatives or what is the intent behind some of it. We're looking at the possibility of clarifying or defining some of the uses allowed in terms of the pre-existing uses like shooting range and or truck garden. And then we're gonna look to notice for any public hearing all property owners within the floodplain and potentially even about a buffer within that, yeah. That was about it for floodplain. I guess I'll ask everybody here, would 3:31 work for you if we were to host a hearing, open a hearing that day?
Yes.
So this would not be at our regularly scheduled CPDC. This is
not.
okay. I thought I heard you seconds ago say it might.
So your regularly scheduled is April 14th, and so if we open the 31st, what it allows is possibly another discussion.
Continuation,
of
okay.
the- Yeah.
Yeah, 3:31 should be fine.
Works for me.
I have to see, but
I said it works for him. Still nothing, guy. I don't know what's going on. I have found a loose audio jack, but I don't quite know where it plugs into or if it's even really yeah.
I will have to review and get back to you, but if everyone else can make it.
Alright. Let's floodplain.
Okay, what's next?
I believe it was the Eastern Gateway, which no real update, no major update. We just wanted to kind of give the shout out that the survey was released today that we built with the steering committee and the consultants. It's a fairly visual survey. It's on a story map, so it's not easily translated into like a printable survey, which is the unfortunate piece, but it is a fairly thorough survey in terms of some district allowances. If you can help share it, let people know, friends, neighbors, other. It will be open for anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. We'll keep tallies of the numbers, but we'll blast that pretty regularly in hopes of getting good feedback to reconfirm priorities and some district intents, and work with the steering committee on those. Steering committee's meeting towards the end of the month, 2 weeks from today, I believe. We'll start getting into some like real planning metrics and digestions in terms of like setback buffers and things of that nature, because some of those can apply to almost any general use. In terms of separation from residential districts, connection points, and so on. So we'll start working through some of those key areas of interest with the steering committee and what might make sense for any given district considerations as the architect firm looks to one day bubble these out, draw some concepts. So.
Okay.
It wasn't on the agenda, but we did throw in the drive too, and we can discuss it, but just the AG's office did approve our 3A district amendments. They made some notes in terms of how they feel like ELC might respond, so this is part 1 of 2 of getting towards compliance. The zoning is in effect now, like regardless if EOHLC says it complies with unit capacity or not. The zoning is in effect. Downtown district upzoning and so on is, someone can use it today. And same for the A80 expansions. They made some notes on some definitions and some other clauses in terms of the payments and dues that we wrote on. So we're working with. We still expect a favorable review from ELC. I don't think any of their comments were a huge red flag in terms of compliance needs and metrics, but we haven't heard back from ELC for the compliance district approval. We're still hopeful that that comes in the spring. I've tried to ask if there are new emergency regulations and new deadlines for communities delay their response to a town like Reading, who submitted on time. We haven't got an answer, so we'll keep pushing them. We'd love to hopefully get that letter of approval soon. So.
Do you have from any of your peer community associates, right, other planners that approved, correct? Because there's a number of towns that approved sort of in this same the same general time period. Do you know whether they heard anything, or they're just
they've heard anything? Yeah.
Seeing as they have to redo their like legal.
Yep. So I think they virtually redid their public hearing type process, and public comment closed in mid to late February. I admittedly don't know when the emergency guidance regulations become non-emergency guidance regulations, but I would expect that's coming soon to finalize those. And as of right now, as they're written, they're substantially, if not the same, to the guidelines we used, just with the extended deadlines for some communities.
With the meeting on the 331 and the zoning amendment we reviewed last time, does that go on to town meeting as well, the ADU?
ADU will not move forward to town meeting. Floodplain is on the warrant. Yeah.
Just making sure
Yeah.
you know what we're doing. Alright. And I think the last thing is the meeting minutes.
I did have some questions on the letter from the state. On page 3, it makes a point of saying that section 3 multifamily, I'm on the first paragraph, article 3A, EOHLC subsidized housing inventory, a section 3 multifamily development may be or not required to be eligible for inclusion. It goes further to say town should consult with town council. Do we have a position whether or not we prefer it to be or included or not, and if so, why?
So both council and I feel that our definition is defensible because we worked within existing guidelines, and that an 80% affordable unit has no reason not to qualify for the SHI. It's not more erroneous than a non-qualifying unit. A non-qualifying SHI unit might be one that's deed restricted at 100 to 120% area median income. In that case, it's still an affordable unit in that it has a regulatory agreement and income restrictions and so on, but that designation does not get you onto the SHI. Because our definition and our requirements correlate to the 80% area median income, they should qualify for the SHI. That's how we wrote it. It would be a disservice if we had 80% units that weren't getting on the SHI to keep us above the 10%. So we feel our definition is reasonable and defensible.
I'm pointing more to the affordable units maybe, but are not required to be. Who are they speaking of?
So
Who's making that judgment, whether or not it will be included?
that is how ELC simply defined their,
So it's their call.
yeah.
Okay, they have the right, but not the obligation.
Right.
And your position is it should be added simply because it's compliant.
Right.
There are two things in my life I've realized don't have to make sense, and one of them is finance and taxes, because it's written for compliance terms, so they can create language that makes no sense. The other is just law. So my concern would be if they're saying that it doesn't have to be counted, any confidence we have in the way we've constructed it, I'd almost prefer that we ask for an opinion, for them to give us an opinion, our language. This seems to be conclusive, but maybe they haven't read it to the level.
Their opinion will come in their final determination for compliance or not, and they'll note it as we either comply with the guidelines or we don't. I don't see how that necessarily gets at like the metrics in terms of unit capacity, zoning district acreage, and things that generate your compliance, but I'm sure they'll flag it nonetheless, either as approved or request to amend the definition of affordable unit.
There are two. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I guess when new units come on, right? I guess this is the I'm trying to get to the point of where do we hear the answer from them that complies, and that's when, right, new units come on, we submit something that says we have this new unit, here's the deed restriction, but I don't know what we send to them, but right, and it's a different group within EOHLC that manages the SHI, then will manage compliance,
3A
right? 3A compliance, and so, right, it's that group, right, that for some reason may claim this clause but are not required to be, right?
Exactly.
For some reason, and so I guess to John's point, have we ever come across them questioning? Is there ever a back and forth with them, with the part of EOHLC that manages the SHI? That's a lot of
You mean an
acronyms.
appeal, actually a formal?
Yeah, is there an appeal process, or has there ever been a back and forth where we'd have to go find out whether there's an appeal process?
Not that I have heard. Every request for new units on the SHI, I believe, has been added to the SHI. We have a few upcoming that we'll be requesting soon. Johnson Woods and some others continue on, but we've never gotten a pushback from them from 40R or other qualifying units.
There are two places in this letter where they say town should consult with town council on this matter. And those to me are disclaimers. You've been warned. So I just want to make sure that we understand the import of what they're saying.
Yeah.
Interestingly, in page 4C, they do have the ability to approve a greater number of affordable units, but on the language on that page, but it describes what they might apply, but not a process. There's no there's no way we could appeal or push forward, or there's no set of principles here. It's basically, if we feel like it and it kind of meets these, we'll do it. So that's another reason to kind of nail this down. If we're going through all this effort to get affordable housing, let's not lose them just because we didn't do the homework up front. What else? And I had no idea what they were talking about when the fund and payment of lieu of providing trees. Is the tree fund truly a revolving fund in the accountant's budget? I can't remember anymore.
I think it's a question, we have some different funds.
Well, stormwater.
Right. I had too thought that the tree fund was a revolving fund, but I believe that is actually like a conservation type fund, and
So it's not revolving.
right. And so
And they're saying you're not compliant because it's not in the general fund.
they're saying if you want this payment in lieu,
It's got to be a revolving.
right,
Okay.
and that you have to.
Who's
establish
taking that direction to work on this?
Council said that they are responding with guidance to us
Okay.
in terms of how to make that an effective
Right.
use.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other updates?
Other question.
Net zero action plan is done, we'll blast that out soon, just for general awareness, if anyone's interested to read the plan. Arts and culture action plan is about to wrap up in the next few weeks to a month, and some grant applications are being considered for the spring, so. I should say too, I believe the select board, I think we had discussed it recently on any type of master planning update. I believe the select board discussed it as well. I haven't watched the recording yet, but talking to town management on it, we are actively getting a quote from a consultant in terms of some upfront and new costs, because the numbers we had were from towns that did it a year or 2, 3 ago, so we just want to make sure that some costs are practical in terms of expectations. So I think it'll still be a slight ongoing conversation, but we wanted to get the quote and the brief scope of work to share to see if it meets intents, both if this board were to pursue it and both town leaders and the select board and other, if it meets their intents as well, so.
With the idea of compiling all the different plans,
Yeah.
right, some of which you just mentioned, right, into a cohesive plan plus the gaps that like a transportation plan or something.
Transportation and
that we haven't done.
yeah, we asked for a scope to include some specific elements for like transportation, and if that requires an engineering sub or what that means, so that should be included. If not, we'll go back and forth with them to get it in.
Good.
Right.
Meeting minutes was February 10th. I submitted some updates to Olivia. So on page 1, where Mrs. Mateve asked about the lighting, if you go down the second sentence, I think she stated that she's concerned about the building entry space. It should be the building elevator entry space. And then on page 3, I think the parking is not 19 by 18 foot, but 9 by 18. Those were the two that I caught. Noted those.
I'll move that the minutes for February 10th be approved as modified.
Second?
John?
Yes.
We have Guy raised his hand.
Yes.
We're using Morse code to get
It's
together.
okay, we still have discussion after
It said
that.
on page 1 it should read, Mr. Manganiello asked if they planned on putting guards for snowfall from the roof overhang. Mr. Sandosi said that the overhang is not large enough, I think is his comment, to block snow, and we'll make a note to address it.
Oh, yeah, so it's low enough instead of large enough.
Good.
Good catch.
Thank you, Deb.
Not large enough instead of low enough,
Mhm.
is that correct? Okay.
Gonna make your motion again.
Sure. I'll start over again. The first motion is withdrawn. Second motion goes, I move that the minutes of February 10th, as modified by the comments of the board, be approved.
Second?
Okay, and we'll go this way. John?
Yes.
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 Larry says yes, and Guy, can he type in his response?
He votes yes to approve the
Alright.
minutes.
And that's what we have left on our agenda.
That's it.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Yes.
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 Guy, thank you for bearing with us through the technical difficulties.
At least it was pretty.